Emergency video time. Someone needs wedding food advice, wedding buffet food advice specifically, and I'm here to help. Hi Chefeteers, I'm Chef Nakia, and I want you to be confident in the kitchen, in your own at-home kitchen. And also, if you are helping a loved one get together some wedding food planning and such, I want you to be confident in that arena also. So last week I asked you all if you had any requests about what kind of content I shared more about, and somebody commented with a very specific wedding focused question. So first of all, thank you so much for trusting me to help give you some advice around this topic, and thank you for commenting. And if anybody else has any kitchen food related curiosities that you would like my take on, comment on this video, or really any video that makes you feel inspired to ask a question. All right, first off, why am I talking about wedding food? So I am a personal chef and I do small events, cooking for groups of people, typically less than 20. So I could absolutely do like a micro wedding style service. But in my business, I don't do like large wedding catering by any means. In my past, I have been an employee doing food service for larger weddings. I was definitely not the one running the show, just like the employee behind it, but I've seen some things. Also, I was a 2024 bride, and as part of our wedding planning, I did some of my own DIY food. I did all of the desserts, about half of the cocktail hour food, and then we hired a caterer to take care of the main meal, and they did the other half of the cocktail hour food. And because this video is a little less structured, because I am just answering this person's question and it's a pretty quick turnaround for everything, I might be getting sick. I feel like I just got over a cold, but I wanted to definitely get this out before I lose my voice. And I'm probably gonna be sipping on some tea. We can have a little bit of a cozy chat talking about how to set up a beautiful buffet for your wedding. So what do you need to set up a beautiful and functional buffet at a wedding? Today I'm going to break it up into kind of 3 pieces. The first one is very much focused on the supplies that we'll need. The second is thinking through the labor aspect of, you need people doing things to help you out to make this happen. And then at the end, I will give you a few fun tips for making the food look more beautiful. All right, so this is the comment that I received on a previous video. It says, I would love to hear how to pull a great buffet for a wedding with drop-off catering. Menu is steak, fried potatoes, rice, salad. Should I stay away from fried appetizers? Any wedding-related advice for food would be very much appreciated. Thanks for the comment. Again, should I stay away from fried appetizers? I'm going to read this as cocktail hour food appetizers. Well, it depends. I would not recommend anything like fried pickles where the inside is very moist, and for a great fried pickle, you want like a nice crispy exterior. So if it is a drop-off catering, that pickle is going to be fried hours before the person is actually enjoying it. And it's just going to get mushier and mushier and mushier. So it depends on the type of appetizer. I think that you could do like deep fried wonton wrapped goodies. I think that there are plenty of like fried chicken options that could stay crispy long enough, like popcorn chicken-y type fried chicken. French fries typically are gonna last a while and still be good. Like, you're pretty good to go with French fries. And without going through an entire list of every fried food we've all ever heard of, I would say the more juicy and moist the inside of it is, the less likely that the exterior is still going to be crispy. If there are specific appetizers that you were thinking about using and you're really not sure about, you can test it out. Then test run that over an hour, 2 or 3, between when the caterer, restaurant, whoever makes it, transports it to you, it rests, and then it's ready to serve it to guests. So try to think about how long realistically that's gonna take, and then test that food in that scenario to see if it's still good or not. I am going to make a few assumptions here though, just so that we can move through this conversation. So the guest count is the first assumption. With smaller wedding guest counts, a lot of times it's more feasible to do plated dinners or family style dinners. So I'm gonna assume if you're doing a buffet, you're probably looking at 60, 80 or more people, most likely. And then on the higher end of that, if you are actually getting a drop-off caterer, so for anyone who's familiar with what that means that the food is prepared off-site by either a restaurant or a catering service, or really it could even be like friends and family could fall into this too. But the food is prepared off-site and then they bring it to your venue and all they do is drop it off. They don't stick around and serve anything. They don't help clean anything up, and they don't bring like multiple rounds of food to you. They bring it all, they drop it off, they leave, and then the event happens. So I doubt that this person has a very large guest count, because if you're trying to serve 200 or 300 people, it's much more likely that you're going to hire a full service catering staff to handle that, because that is a lot of people to feed. So I'm going to assume that you have about 100 people coming to your wedding. The next assumption I'm going to make is that your wedding follows a, for the most part, traditional wedding day timeline. This doesn't mean that like every single thing about your wedding is following a strong tradition necessarily. I'm just saying that like in the morning, there's some time for setup at the venue, at the reception space. In the early afternoon, the couple who is getting married is most likely going to begin taking photos with a photographer. From there, the day is gonna go pretty quickly, from photos to more photos to more photos to a ceremony, maybe in the afternoon or early evening, lasting around 30 minutes or so, followed by a cocktail hour to hour and a half, then followed by a dinner reception where everybody will be sitting and eating dinner together at the same time. We really only have the one dinner service time. There are styles of weddings, styles of events where people opt for a more like cocktail style throughout the entire event. And so this type of an event, you would have like 6 hours of people being able to go up to tables, or they're being passed hors d'oeuvres around, and you can eat little like snacks, small plates of things over many hours. If you are not hiring a full-on catering service, this is gonna be really hard to execute. So I would recommend, first and foremost, with a buffet at a wedding that you're getting drop-off catering for, definitely just have it set for a specific window of time. And my last assumption, for now anyway, is that the person who asked me this question is probably either one of the people getting married or very, very close to the couple getting married. So maybe a parent or very close family member, best friend, sibling, you know, someone who is going to have plenty of other responsibilities and things to be doing, emotional moments and priorities on the wedding day. You yourself most likely aren't going to have the time to actually be doing the pieces of the labor that I talk about later. So whenever we get to that, be thinking about, okay, who is going to be the person who is actually doing this? Because it's great for you to plan it, but definitely get hands on deck, like helping hands to execute this. Things to consider is, what is the venue style? Is this an indoor venue or an outdoor venue? If it is an outdoor venue, will your buffet table be covered from the elements? Hopefully there's at least some sort of like shelter house roof type thing. Personally, I got married at a public park, but they're like set up for weddings. And so they have the ceremony space, and separately, I mean, just like up a path a little bit, they have this little pavilion. Tonks wanted to say hi again. This is like 2 weeks in a row. This is kind of crazy. I guess she just loves weddings. So the pavilion had 2 permanent walls and then a 3rd optional wall that you could close off or open up, and 1 open space, like open side. We did family style, we didn't do buffet. But if we had done buffet, I definitely would have made sure that the buffet tables were set up next to a permanent wall and under a roof. This will help if the wind picks up or if you get any afternoon rain or anything to keep the food protected. Of course, if you are inside, you don't really have to worry about the weather and the elements as much. Another thing to consider is if there are any electrical outlets available. You won't necessarily need to be using things that you need to plug in. Like, you could use crock pots if you want to, but you don't have to have electrical outlets available in order to set up a buffet line. But if you are thinking about maybe trying to utilize some crock pots or heat lamps or anything that needs electricity, like, do you even have it around? Also, a venue consideration is, does the venue come with tables and or tablecloths? Most of the time, they won't include tablecloths. Some venues do have tables for you to use. So if they do have tables, do they have the right size or quantity of tables for you to be able to use those for a buffet setup? And if not, how many tables do you need to either borrow or potentially rent? Another note with the tablecloths, whenever you do have like a floor length tablecloth, which always looks nicest, we don't want to necessarily see the legs of our tables, make sure that those are tucked in tight, because you don't want any of your guests to trip over that tablecloth as they're, building their plates or walking away from the buffet table. That would be awful. So just make sure that any floor length tablecloths, especially around the buffet table, they're going to be tucked in nice and tight. Okay, as far as equipment needed for serving the food, hot dishes that need to be kept hot, oftentimes will be served out of chafing dishes. If you've been to large events, banquet style events, you've probably seen these. You may have thought, oh, they're not the cutest necessarily, but also you probably don't spend that much time really focusing on what they look like. If you are concerned about the visual beauty of these, there's a couple things you can do. There's some like wooden boxes, you can build these. You might be able to find them on Etsy or something that you could put around to kind of cover up the base legs of that chafing dish. Or they do have stretched fabric versions of this. You can also get some that are just like nicer looking. They're going to be more expensive if you choose to purchase these. And there are round ones or rectangular ones. Now, these chafing dishes typically work by having legs that go up to a holding area. There will be 1 or 2 sterno flames underneath. Pay attention to if they are 2-hour burn time or 6-hour burn time flames. If you choose to go with the 2-hour burn time, I would highly recommend getting extras just in case some of them burn out much more quickly than the 2 hours, or if your buffet line takes a little longer than you think. We'll talk more about timing in a minute. You've got your sterno flames, you have the legs of the chafing dish holding up the area where you can now put a pan. And that first pan that goes in, you're gonna add some water into that, and that helps so that the heat from the sterno flames has a medium to like keep things heated more evenly. Then you will place in 1 or 2, depending on the size of things, pans of your food into each of those. And then typically there is a cover that you will put on top of that. So that is typically how any hot food will be displayed. And then cold food, you have some more options with that. Now, of course, if you are outside on a very hot summer's day, you may not want to keep your salads outside for very long. If there is no refrigerator or anything for you to keep your salads in, you could get a second larger bowl, put an ice bath in there, and put the salad in that. People are gonna find that a little bit harder to serve themselves from. That salad bowl is probably gonna move around a bit. So you could keep it in the ice bath until right before people start walking through the buffet, and then maybe you slide that ice bath out. But hopefully, most situations, it won't be so hot that your cold food, you have to have it setting on ice. Hopefully with your cold food, you can do a few more like fun, beautiful displays. If your buffet table is only going to be one-sided, like you only want people walking down one side of that table to serve themselves, then you can have that table put up against a wall, and then you can decorate that wall, or you can add vases of flowers or other decor behind your serving dishes. Between the guests and the food on that side of the table, don't put too much decor there, because people will need that space they might accidentally bring their like drink in their hand with them. So they might set it down while they're serving themselves. If you have children or anybody at your event that might need an extra hand, then you might have one person going through the buffet line, serving onto multiple plates and managing those, so they will want space to lay those down. The other option would be having a buffet table that is not up against the wall, so that people can serve themselves from both sides of that table. And in that case, you're really gonna wanna go minimal with decor, because space is gonna be a hot commodity. Something else important to consider is your drop-off caterer. How long have they been doing this? How often do they do drop-off catering? It might be something that they do every single weekend, or multiple times a weekend, even multiple days, like multiple drop-offs per day. If that's the case, it's probably a very well-oiled machine for them, and so you can ask them for a lot of advice that's very specific to your event, and they're gonna have the experience to be able to help you a lot with figuring out the best like execution for the food that they're providing you, the event space, maybe they've worked that venue before, and then your like group size. If it is someone who doesn't do this often, maybe they are doing it as a favor for you, you have like a favorite restaurant that you go to, and they said, oh, okay, we will drop off catering for your wedding, but it's not something that we typically do, then I would be more careful to specifically spell out exactly what their expectations are. Are they going to bring serving utensils or not? Are they going to have the food in trays that will fit into the chafing dishes that you purchase? What time are they going to arrive? With a drop-off caterer who does this a lot, I would be comfortable having them bring the food closer to your dinner time. If this is something where it's like their first and only time doing this, I would plan for them to arrive with the food earlier, like hours early, just in case. Also, it depends on how far away the restaurant is. If they're only 20 minutes away and it's an area that doesn't experience much traffic, fine. Then you probably don't need to plan for hours. But if they are already an hour away and traffic can be crazy at times, or weather can very strongly impact the traffic, then that's when I would continue extending out what time you want them to arrive with the food. That just gives everybody a little more wiggle time, a little bit more grace in case there is crazy traffic, in case they had planned for it to take them 5 minutes to load up the van. Actually, it took them 35 minutes. And then once one thing has set you behind, all the other things, right? The universe seems to just keep sending more and more little hiccups to get in your way. So just to alleviate some of that stress around making it too tight of a time frame, if they're not very experienced, plan for them to arrive with food earlier than normal. Also, they are probably not going to include anything above and beyond the food unless you all have had a very specific conversation about them also, for example, providing the serving utensils. It is possible that some drop-off caterers might provide the chafing dishes and sternos and things for you, though that is pretty unlikely. So I would plan to get all of that stuff yourself, only if that catering team specifically states that they will bring chafing dishes and like the exact number and the exact number of sternos, and make sure that they provide some extras just in case they're partially used and they burn out faster. All of that stuff. It would be rare though to have someone offer to do that for you, but if they do, get specific numbers in writing. That way you can be prepared for exactly what they're bringing you. Another thing that's possible that they would provide, though pretty unlikely, would be signs to accompany the food along with description and or any dietary restrictions. So you will probably want to print off signage and not just expect the drop-off caterer to provide that. This is also a fun way to keep your wedding theme and like add some beauty to that sign. So I think all in all, it's a good thing that you get to do that yourself. And then the last thing that they could possibly provide, but probably won't, would be like plateware, silverware, stuff like that. If it is something that they are providing, 99% of the time it is going to be disposable plateware, silverware. One thing to keep in mind, especially because on this comment she specifically mentioned that they were having steak, and we don't know how this steak is prepared. If it's like an already thinly sliced steak like carne asada or something like super duper tender, like fall apart, like almost like a brisket-y type steak, then disposable might work out fine. But if we're talking about like hunks of meat steak, like a ribeye or filet or something like that, it's gonna be really frustrating to try to cut that with a plastic knife on a paper or thin plastic plate. So if you are serving like steak that people are going to be slicing into, you're gonna wanna provide them steak knives and a solid surface to cut that on, like a real, ceramic plate or thicker, nicer plate. It would be fairly tough to really successfully execute something like filet, pre-cooked and holding hot for several hours type filet dinner. So if you are still in the planning stages of a menu at this point, if you get the option of like carne asada or short ribs, choose that over actual filet. It will also should be way friendlier to your budget to not get straight up filet. And not to mention the environmental impact of using disposables. Now, exactly what your venue setup is going to look like will absolutely depend on a lot of different things. There are some places where you have one room, and this one room is where all of the dining is going to happen. Maybe even your cocktail hour is there. Your dance floor, everything is one. Was like my wedding, we just had the one pavilion. There are other venues where you'll have one main room for all of the guests to be in, but then you might have a small kitchen behind a set of swinging doors that you are welcome to utilize. If you have some of that extra space that is not, in viewpoint of guests, then you may be able to hold some of that food back in a separate room. There might be a refrigerator and or an oven, so you could keep the hot food hot in the oven, keep it on a low setting. Your venue may not have that space or any of those appliances, and so if that's the case, then I would recommend you have the drop catering not drop stuff off until about an hour or two before your meal time, because once you are responsible for the food, it's not going to be the easiest process to keep the hot food hot and the cold food cold. So this really leads us into the labor part of it. Timing and labor. When are things going to happen and who is making sure that this is happening? And if you are somebody who just said, oh, well, I have a wedding coordinator, so he or she will just take care of all of this. With the most kindness and the warmest hug, no. They have so many other things to be working on right now, like throughout your day. This, setting up a buffet, is an entire 1 or 2 person's job. So if you are expecting your wedding coordinator to do that, then they're gonna have to be spending the majority of their time here doing this, and they won't be able to be coordinating with your other vendors, like your DJ or your photographer, videographer, bar staff, if you have a bar staff coming, rentals, venue rentals, officiant, and so forth. They also may miss things leading up to your ceremony. They're going to make sure that your officiant also knows exactly what time we're starting. You may have on your timeline that we're starting at 4:15, but on the day of, as things go, typically it's not going to happen right at 4:15. It might be 4:20 or 4:25, which is totally fine, but you need someone. But if you have hired a wedding coordinator, then you need that person focusing on that kind of stuff, not on the food kind of stuff. So what are your options? You could ask your coordinator, you could talk to them about doing a DIY buffet style situation and ask them if they have assistants or if they have worked with people who they would recommend you hiring. So maybe they'll say, oh yeah, I'll bring 2 assistants with me that I've worked with before. I know them well, I trust them. I'll make sure that they are handling this. But a wedding coordinator might not necessarily have the capacity to bring these extra people on staff. So they may also say, in the past, I have worked with this full service catering service. It's not like you have to hire the entire company, right? You're really just hiring an extra person or 2. If your wedding coordinator doesn't have any referral or suggestions, then you could also talk to your venue, your photographer, or your DJ. A lot of people in the wedding industry, they network during other people's weddings, and if they see somebody working their butt off and being super organized, they're probably going to remember them. So you might be able to get connected with some trustworthy service staff through referrals by any of your other professional vendors. And then lastly, if you still need somehow to connect with somebody and none of these other ways work, then you could look at a service like Thumbtack or any directory similar to Thumbtack where individuals will list their services on the site and you can contact them directly, and they will typically have a like rate per hour that you can hire them at to come. And pretty much anyone who has worked as an event server before, even maybe as a restaurant server, would be like perfectly capable and competent at helping you with something like this. But the idea is, if you can hire somebody, if you have it in your budget to be able to hire somebody, then I would highly recommend doing this, because now this person just has one job and one responsibility during your wedding, and that's the only reason why they're there. If you're hoping to get volunteers, like family members or my college or coworker friends, I'm inviting them to the wedding, but I'm hoping that they'll help out with this too, you need to be okay with them potentially missing out on a part of your event, potentially an important part of your wedding day. They need to be okay missing that also. Let's say that you have a second cousin who is going to keep an eye out for the food. So let's say that dinner time is at 6:30, so they are planning to arrive at 5, and your ceremony is at, let's say, 4:15. So your second cousin should be able to go enjoy the ceremony, and once that's over, then they can go to where the drop-off caterer will probably be and wait around for them to arrive. Well, what happens if your drop-off caterer is 45 minutes early? Well, now that is smack dab in the middle of your ceremony. And so either your second cousin needs to keep their phone on them and be very aware of when the caterer is going to arrive and be willing to leave the ceremony, or that caterer is now going to be standing around twiddling their thumbs waiting and being like, I don't know who to contact, right? And so that's not really a situation that you probably want to have happen. So that is why if you hire somebody, then they can be there, right? They don't need to be at the ceremony at all. They can just be there waiting and focused on the catering. So I do not recommend only having volunteer family or friends do this for you. However, if that is the situation that you're in and you do have people willing to do that, you're gonna really need to think strategically and in a lot of detail about your timeline for the day and where these people fit in, so that hopefully they don't miss anything. Now, because your wedding day is so unique to you, I don't know your priorities or your relationships or, anything about your venue and like distance from ceremony space to cocktail hour to reception space or anything like that. I can't plot this out for you. So this is something that you're really gonna need to think through on your own. And or if you have not met Jamie Wolfer, she is an online wedding planner, and as I was planning my own wedding, I watched probably her entire catalog of videos. She has so much great advice, and she even has a tool called My Perfect Wedding Timeline. So if you do not have a timeline together yet, and there are a lot of moving pieces here that you need to figure out, and you really want your volunteers to get to enjoy every special moment of the day, I would highly recommend using a timeline tool to make sure that the people who are kind enough to volunteer to help you with the food stuff still get to experience and enjoy as much of the whole wedding celebration as possible. One thing I can tell you is that simply setting up the food is never simple, it's never quick. It is a process that takes time and attention, and the more you plan things ahead of time, potentially, the less time and attention that on the day the person needs to focus. However, no matter what, there is still going to be a significant amount of time and attention required to execute this and execute this well. So what are some of the tasks that you will need a person to be doing? One of the things would be setting up your buffet tables with like the tablecloths, any display equipment. If you wanted to add decor on also, but those chafing dishes, they may even need to be pre-filling those chafing dishes with water, plates for your guests, and then any of the serving utensils. Hopefully this is something that can be done earlier on in the day, and so you or a wedding party member or someone might be able to be there and doing this. I would still though plan to have a solid layout map sort of situation to show them exactly where you want the buffet tables set up and what you want them to look like. Another task that someone will need to be around for is to meet the caterer, possibly even direct them through the venue to where they need to drop the food off. Double check that all of the food that is delivered is what was ordered. And so if they are short anything, are they going to go back and get it and bring it to you? Or do you now need to figure out a way, like maybe they forgot all of the salads. You thought that you ordered salads, but they don't have salads on the PO, so they don't have any salads prepared. So you need someone to figure out, are we gonna get salads here? And then organize all that food, right? Keeping your hot dishes together, your cold dishes together. If there's a refrigerator, popping those in there. And then also, unless you have a tiny little party, most of the time you're going to have like 4, 5, 6, 10 dishes of the same green beans. So keeping those all stacked together or in a line, organized, means that as the buffet line is moving, you are going to be able to easily replenish those green beans. You know exactly where to pull those from. So hopefully this is happening within an hour or two of dinner time, which most likely is going to be during cocktail hour. So if you do have volunteers helping, hopefully they're not gonna miss much. Now, right before dinner starts, you need someone placing the food into the chafing dishes, placing the cold food onto the displays or other places of your buffet table, making sure that the food that should be hot is actually hot. Sterno heaters and chafing dish setup is meant to keep already warm food warmer longer. It is not meant to actually reheat food. That same person also getting rid of empty trays and replenishing with fresh trays of the food, checking the water level in those chafing dishes. You also need someone to release tables to the buffet line. Okay, for a group of about 100 people, it's probably gonna take about 30 minutes to get everybody through that line. And so of course you don't want everybody walking up all at the same time and then waiting for 30 minutes. Oftentimes it's either the DJ or the wedding coordinator who will walk around and release tables one at a time. But if you don't have either of these, then you will also need somebody to manage this. And something else to consider with this is that if you have some people who you know are going to need some extra time or assistance going through the buffet line, you may want to have those people go first. If you're wondering, okay, what do we do while we're waiting, right? You don't want to say like, all right, we're gonna eat dinner now, and then everybody watches grandma and grandpa go fill up their plates. That doesn't sound very fun. So either wait to announce, all right, we're gonna start dinner soon, until after they've gotten their food, or some people will choose to take group photos as people are on their way to the buffet line. So the couple, the married couple, will like sit in the middle of the room, and then as a table is released for dinner, those people will go take a big group photo with the bride and groom, or bride and bride, or groom and groom, and then they'll go from that photo area over to the buffet table. And so if you are doing this, then this could be a great time for grandma and grandpa to go start loading up their plates while that first other table is taking pictures with you. This will make the whole thing feel so much more like cohesive, and nobody's gonna feel like, oh, is everybody looking at me getting my food? And then another thing that I thought of, I'm like, maybe I need to make a whole separate video about helping grandma and grandpa at the buffet table. But I just thought of this, and I actually almost got emotional thinking about it. But in weddings, oftentimes we have a lot of opportunities to honor like our parents and maybe really close friends, like maid of honor, bridesmaids, groomsmen, style situations. But there aren't always already included traditional moments to honor our grandparents or create like a special moment with them. Maybe you go with them to the buffet table, and so you guys get that extra special close moment together. And I'm sure that it's gonna tickle them. They're gonna love having a little bit of like one-on-one time with you during that moment. And it'll just be like a special little addition to the day that I think will mean a lot for everybody involved. If that's something that speaks to you, maybe consider adding that into your DIY buffet, because that's one of the fun things about doing DIY things, right? Is we get to really personalize it to be exactly how we want it to be. So assuming that we are getting everybody through in about 30 minutes, then think about the people who are helping to replenish that food. For about 30 minutes, they're going to be focused on swapping out the empty trays and the new trays. And then they're gonna have to, at some point, stop and eat also. If you have way more than 100 people, and so it's gonna take a lot longer, or if you just want things to go quicker than 30 minutes, you could then, that's when you could have that buffet line a two line on one table buffet line, or you could set up two different buffet tables. So half of your guests serve themselves from this setup over here, the other half serve themselves from this setup over there. And if you do it that way, I would highly recommend having at least one person focused on each of these setups. Don't have the same person trying to manage going back and forth, because I do think that at some point dishes are going to be empty on both sides, and now your guests are going to be waiting for another wedding guest to hurry up and get them the food, which might just make like people feel a little bit uncomfortable possibly. You might have the like personality within your family friend group where people love serving and hosting, and it's a sign of love to people, and so they might think it's super fun, like, oh, hold on, Uncle Jimmy, I'm coming with more green beans. Or, someone else yelling across like, hey Janet, we're out of cornbread over here, and like everybody laughs and stuff. Like maybe that's a super fun environment for you all. But if thinking about your family members or friends joyfully, but still like yelling at each other at your wedding about who needs more cornbread or not, then you might want to really consider hiring professionals to focus on this for you. Another thing, so cornbread, dinner rolls, all of that kind of stuff, you can have those on the dining tables. That way it also takes that space away from the buffet table. So you could consider having some stuff set out at your dining room tables also to save a little bit of time. And then after everybody is served, you need somebody to clean up all of the dirty dishes, put away any of the leftover food if you want to save that, and then stack up chafing dishes, serving utensils, extinguish those sternos, that's very important. You don't want to accidentally cause a fire because someone forgot that the flame was still lit. Yeah, so just someone who's really focused on the cleaning up of the buffet table itself. And then you also need to clean up all of the dining tables. If you think, oh, everyone is just gonna know, let's say you have disposable plates and silverware and stuff, everybody is just going to know to throw those away. At weddings, something weird happens, people don't just know it. So you're gonna need to announce it, remind people, and have visible trash cans so that they know where they are throwing things away. If that is an issue for you, if you don't want trash cans to be visible, then you're going to need people to bus other people's empty plates and used silverware. If you rented like real plates, right, that you aren't going to throw away, depending on the rental company you used, they may require that you fully wash the plates before getting them back to them, or they may be okay with you just scraping them. However, they're not gonna be okay with actual like food left on the plates. So you're gonna either need people washing plates, or at the very least just scraping and stacking those back into the bins for the rental company to come and clean back up. So that's another, it's not the largest piece of labor, but it is something that you really need to think through. Who is doing this? Where is this happening? You probably don't necessarily want it somewhere where everybody is like a prominent place. Hopefully there is a back room or something where people can be doing this. But the people who are doing this, they might possibly miss a toast, or they might miss a father-son dance, mother-son dance, you know, whatever dances you're doing. This is another time where if they're family and friend volunteers, they might end up missing out on a important special part of your wedding day. So how do we make our food on our buffet display pretty? All right, as I showed some examples before of some of these different ways to display food, playing with height or different types of like display elements on the table can be very fun. This is best to do with cold or like room temperature food, because chafing dishes are typically all going to be at the same height. Also, edible flowers and fresh herbs can really go a long way. If you are going to put any flowers onto food, like onto the food display, as in like literally touching the food, make sure that they are edible flowers. If you want flowers in a vase, that's fine, whatever. Now this is not super common, but if your drop caterer has sauces that accompany some of the dishes, you could ask if they will give you a squeeze bottle. So if they delivered the sauce already in a squeeze bottle, that would be awesome. Or you could purchase your own, maybe get a funnel also, and the sauces that they deliver, you could put in a squeeze bottle, because this is way easier to control, and you can drizzle that right over whatever dish the sauce is for. That nice drizzle of a sauce is going to look very fancy. It just looks intentional and really nice. And even if you can't put quite enough sauce on the dish, you can at least do that for the buffet presentation, and then have a little bowl with a spoon on the side, and people can add additional sauce to their preference. All right, and then color goes a long way, like bright colors, using color theory and like opposites, or like a triad on the color wheel, really helps elevate your food. An example of this is, let's say you have grilled chicken breast as a dish. You could ask the caterer if they could do some like tricolor cherry tomatoes, like roasted tricolor cherry tomatoes or something like that, with that chicken breast. So your dish now has the, like kind of white with some, maybe some grill marks on it chicken, but with little yellow, orange, and purple-ish cherry tomatoes in there. And then maybe you add some fresh parsley on the side. And so you've got that green and that red, yellow, a little bit of that purple-ish. And those are pretty simple additions. It'll really elevate the appearance of that. So if you're really focused on like a beautiful buffet display, and beautiful as in the food itself, think about those types of presentation options. So I want to just go back to the comment again one more time, because a lot of what I shared was like a lot of what I shared was like general buffet and beautiful buffet advice. They did share with me some of the exact dishes here. So let's see, it says steak, fried potatoes, rice, and salad. With the steak, yeah, I think some colorful edible flowers would be awesome. Fried potatoes, you can totally add just sprigs of like curly parsley, would look great in there too. So a little bit of that bright, vibrant green for those roasted potatoes. Rice, I would actually probably just keep as is. It's probably gonna be a nice bright white color. I wouldn't add too much else with that. Maybe you put a vase of colorful flowers next to that, but I wouldn't say that that's totally necessary. And then salad. Salads can be very beautiful. Of course, if you have a Caesar salad, that's not gonna have as much color opportunity as a seasonal salad with, you know, grilled peaches and pickled red onion, and then blueberries and bright white goat cheese. So it depends on the ingredients of the salad as to how much color that it will provide. But even if you have a garden salad, you can have the green from the lettuce, red cherry tomatoes, orange carrots, purplish color from like sliced red cabbage. You can have deeper greens if you keep the skin on your cucumber. If you have croutons on there, that gives you a little bit of a yellow color. And a garden salad, you could absolutely add some edible flowers on top of that too for additional color. If you want more pinkish reds, you could do like sliced radishes in there too. Okay, here's the bottom line. People are there at your wedding to celebrate you and celebrate your love, and they want to have a great time too. They're not expecting your buffet to be a total work of art, but what they do want is delicious food, enough food, and food that didn't feel like a hassle to get. Any sort of celebratory event, a lot of times we love having good food around. People are really consumed with the experience overall, with maybe talking with friends or family members that they don't get to see very often, and they will enjoy your food, but they're not like judging your food by any means. So I would spend my time focusing on the timeline and executing things as stress-free as possible for as many people involved as possible. And then I think that you are gonna be good to go. Thank you, Chefeteers. Thank you again so much for the question. If you are here for more at-home cooking advice and not so much the wedding-focused cooking advice, don't worry, I will have more at-home content coming up. If you do really love the wedding advice, you can keep asking questions. I'll do my best. Thank you, Chefeteers. I hope that you cook some delicious meals soon. And if you are wedding planning, good luck. I hope the best for you wedding planning. It's super fun. It can be stressful, but I hope that you find the joy in wedding planning too.